Testing. Testing. Esto. I really thought I said it would be great. I thought I could they could have squared it from somewhere else with all the questions. Go back to the pushing extra hard after all of that. Students. This I switched over to this and now my camera's not working and I don't know why, which is fine, whatever, I thought I'm gonna be off camera. Alright, I just wanted to tell you that. Okay. Thank you. All right. Or I'll come out after.
Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good. How are you, Phil?
Not too bad. First one's here, other than Christina, huh?
Yeah, so far.
Okay.
How's the noise level over in your part of the building?
Yeah, I could hear it from the outside coming in this morning. I'm like, wow, that's gonna be bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, we're going to connect today, right?
Yeah, at 10.
Yeah, that's great. Looking forward to that. Okay.
Actually, I guess at 10 and 10:30.
Right, we're going to look at the decision ed,
Right.
talk about the decision ed dashboard and
Yep.
some more questions. And maybe the other way around.
Can you guys hear me?
We can, Christina.
Okay, why can't I hear you? This is odd.
So you can't hear us, Christina?
I can hear through the wall because you're next to me, Dr. Silver. Well, hold on. This is weird. Let me-
It sounds like you're talking through a tunnel.
Okay, testing. You can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay.
I wonder if you're getting an echo from my office.
I know, I heard that. now.
Hmm.
Let me put this down.
I'm just going to mute myself. So.
Yeah, the drilling is intense today underneath on our area. Why is this echoing? I can hear it. I set up my new laptop and the camera's not working. There's something wrong with the speakers. I can hear the echo. Wow, that's crazy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Kim. I was just explaining to them I set up a new laptop, so the camera's not working. I don't know why. And my speaker, I had to switch speakers and there's weird echo. So
I'm like, excuses, Christina.
I should have tested. It's the first Zoom after setting it up. So I'm like, would have been smart to test it.
Okay, it's always something.
Isn't it?
Okay, well, I know it's 8:30, but I'm going to wait for a couple of board members. Just given that we're going to do contracts first.
Yep.
Oops, yeah. Okay. And this is a moment, perhaps we should actually go to one of the updates first instead of losing these few minutes. Just because I don't see any of my colleagues yet. For example, I quickly looked at the budget report. I don't know, Chief Penn, your thoughts, if you want to quickly maybe go through that.
Sure. You mean the one the financials covering in the August period?
Yes, and it was, yeah.
I mean, as you saw in the memo that came with it, you know, we're still in the quiet period for a school district, right? We're not at a point where we're really getting into the heavy spending coming through the month of August. So the bulk of the spend continued to be in the 12-month salaries, the fringe associated with those, and our utilities. You know, the other thing that I noted is that we saw a big increase in claims in our medical in July, and we had started to see that trend drop again in August, and that continued through the month of August. So it came back down much closer to a normal level. And then just the last piece is that our encumbrances were up about $3.5 million from the prior month, but that's all due to placing orders for instructional supplies. As our contracts for maintenance and professional services got approved, we would then start to encumber the money. And again, it's kind of, and I said this in the last line, we're right about where I expect it to be at the beginning of the school year.
Thank you, Chief Penn. Yeah, I saw it, and thank you. It was very, your memo was very crisp and to the point, and I thought it would be easy for us to quickly take that as one of our agenda items off. So yeah, I had no questions at all. It completely makes sense what I saw. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I'm still looking in and welcome Chief Avila. I see Mark and say good morning to you, Chiefs or Dr. Silver, and still waiting for some folks. So I'm trying to, I do think my colleagues will be interested in the progress monitoring piece with the ESSER and the ARP. But I'm wondering if
just
number 3, Christina, I don't know how much of an update some of these are.
So the ERS update on financial sustainability is an oral one, and it's fairly brief.
Okay.
Just to update the board that we've had both our kickoff and 2 follow-up meetings with ERS around the project. Right now, we're kind of projecting that the life cycle of the project will take us at least through the month of March, maybe into April, as we work through all the nuances around this. You know, we spent a lot of time in the first 2 real meetings kind of dividing up the work on how we're going to approach this. So me and my staff will be responsible for revenue modeling going forward. And then ERS is taking 6 years of our historical financial data to build kind of what if scenarios on our expenses going forward as well. And then there's a lot of deep dives that we kind of identified yesterday in our big buckets of spend. And they're exactly what you'd expect them to be. It's special education, salaries and benefits, transportation, tuition, all the ones that are really the major cost drivers of the district, to see how do we start to look at deep dives into this and really get into after benchmarking data versus other urban districts, you know, and say, if we're different, why are we different? And then is there anything that we can do to pull a lever to try and get our cost back more into alignment with where we want to be long term? And I think, as I mentioned before on this, when we talk about financial sustainability, the way we're approaching the project overall is that our revenue growth equals our expense growth. So that we're not constantly in a situation where we're chasing a deficit and either cutting staff or cutting programmatic activity to fit the needs of the overall budget. And that's really what the long-term objective comes down to. So I've been happy with the first, couple of weeks of meetings since we had the kickoff. There's a lot of work teed up over the next several months. I don't think there's going to be a huge lift into the 22-23 budget as a result of the project, just given the timing. But if there are any kind of low-hanging fruit that we identify, certainly we'll take that into account into 22-23. But I have a feeling, just given the timing, this is going to have much more of an impact on 23-24. Which is good in the sense that if you think about the timing of the ESSER funding, that's kind of dovetailing into the end of where the spending period is going to be. So I think it sets us up pretty well over the long term in terms of that.
It's great. Yeah, my only question, and this might go without saying, I mean, obviously, this huge influx of funds, right? And that's part of what you're going to speak to today. And knowing that, there's going to be a cliff, right, after that December 2024. So is that built into the work as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, it's a very key part of it, knowing that a lot of the work that we're doing that's funded by that temporary COVID relief will probably be things that we want to carry forward if we find them successful. And so, we're anticipating that there's some elements of the spend there that we want to build into the long term. And so what's the pathway that gets us there?
Yeah.
So that we don't have that funding cliff like you mentioned.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And we know SPED is something that it does seem as if we're, we'll wait for the analysis, but based on what I've seen in prior. So I look forward to that. And good morning. I now see Chief Blackberg. I see my board peer, board member and Vice Chair Shante Brody has joined us. I see Chief Davis Googe, and I think that is all thus far. Vice Chair Brody, just let you know what we did was we went ahead and did a couple of the updates very quickly that's on the agenda. So we did the update for the monthly budget report, as well as just completed the update, which was number 3 on the agenda. The work with ERS, just Chief Penn beginning to give us some explanation where they are and more to come. So just that they started the work. So I wanted to wait for more of my peers before we went into the items for the regular meeting, and also for the progress monitoring for ESSER and the ARP spending. And I guess Christina, I don't know if any of the other members have mentioned that they cannot make today's meeting or
No, and I'm messaging the rest now to see if they are going to join.
So maybe Chief Penn, back at you. This is now going, I'm thinking is maybe agenda item number 2. Okay, that's the calendar.
Madam Chair, it's your meeting. You can go anywhere you want from this point,
Well,
right?
yeah, no, I'm just trying to give people a little bit more time. It's important things that we're talking about, but some of the things that I think are quick hits in comparison to others.
Right. So I just wanted to share with you the draft budget timeline that we had put together that largely mimics what was done for last year's budget development cycle.
Okay.
So as you'll see, we've already started with the ALView training for the budget development team internally here. That got completed on October 6th. We're presenting the timeline to you today, and we'll have a follow-up meeting that goes to, or the follow-up presentation that goes to the full board in about a week. And then you can kind of see through all the additional steps that follow through, both with delivery of data out to the schools, initial budgets coming back, community engagement with the SGCs and other community members, making sure that we have time built in to go through with the public hearing. And if all goes according to plan, we start in October and we end in sort of mid-February with our budget. And the reason we were interested in doing this sort of accelerated timeline and talking with the superintendent about it was it gives us more time to then plan for staff and try to get out there early with postings to try to grab as many staff as we can early on in the cycle. And I hate to say it this way, but beat other districts to the punch, if you will, and try to be out there as early as we can to try to get the staffing needs identified and posted as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And I also want to welcome Board Member Rigger, who is also with us now. So, and again, just catch everyone up. While we do definitely have our agenda, I wanted to give people more time to join us. So we skipped item number 1, which was our items for the regular meeting, those contracts. And we've already completed item number 3 and also item number 5. So we are now talking about item number 2, the budget development calendar. So again, apologize that we're a little out of order this morning. But with that said, Vice Chair Brody and also Board Member Rigger, any questions on the calendar?
I do.
Okay, Vice Chair Brody.
Because we were told the exact same thing when we changed it and moved it up last time.
Mhm.
So is there like we were told to recruit staff to do all those things that was just named, we moved it up to a certain date that was satisfactory to the superintendent. So now we're moving it further back. Is my understanding correct?
I think this lands you on a budget a couple of weeks earlier than you had last year. I'd have to go back and see when the board actually voted on it. But this tees us up to be done with the board's adoption of the budget by mid-February, which I think is going to put us in pretty good position for, as I said, identifying the staff that we need going into the budget and going into the end of year so that we can post for those positions as early as possible.
Yeah, so I guess my question is this date further back than last time? Because we were told the exact same thing last time. That's why we pushed it back to what we landed on for the last cycle.
Okay. I would have to go back. I mean, I think this actually gets us done earlier than it did last year, but I'll double check that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brody. Board Member Rigger, any questions from you?
No, not in terms of the timeline. I do have a question regarding timing around the contracts. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to discuss it here, but from what I'm seeing on the screen, no questions.
Okay, so we'll hold off on the contract question because we're going to jump into contracts in a moment, and maybe we can ask that question there. And I don't have any other questions at this point regarding the calendar. So thank you, Chief Ben.
Sure.
Okay, so I was waiting for more board members for jumping into the contracts. So Christina, just one more check-in with you. Anyone checked in saying they need a couple more minutes, or should we?
Yeah, Craig will be joining shortly. I just sent him the link.
Okay.
Mr. Stallings will be.
All right. I am making a decision for us to go to number 4, Chief Penn, which is the progress monitoring for ESSER and ARP spending. We can do that next. Thank you.
Sure. Christina, would you mind just bringing up the first page of that?
Sorry, please guide me to, oh wait, no, this is the budget report.
Yep. That's it. Perfect. Okay. So as we go forward, we'll continue to refine how we present this data. This was just meant to be a kind of a simple overview of where we are on the spending of the 3 big tranches of the COVID relief funding. And if you remember, this came in ESSER 1 or the CARES Act. Then that was followed pretty quickly by ESSER 2. And then the big one was the ARP, or also called ESSER 3, right? So between those 3 grants we took in or have available to us, is a better way of putting it, a little over $154 million. You'll see in the second column or third column going across what the total value of each of those grants were. And then you'll see the total amount that we've either spent or encumbered so far. So, I would say overall, the spending is tracking to where I'd like it to be at this point. meaning that you want to make sure you go through the spending in the order of your spending deadline. You'd want to make sure you have just about all of ESSER 1 spent as quickly as possible. And then ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, if you remember, we were doing 3-year views of that information as part of our overall strategic plan support and what was being presented to the board a couple of months ago for the ARP spending. One thing that we're taking a close look on is hiring, especially will drive a lot of this plan because we did have a fairly significant amount of staff that are tied to ESSER 2 and ARP. And so we're monitoring pretty closely how many people we're able to bring on board. And I think it's worth noting, as I've engaged with a lot of urban district CFOs across the country, hiring is a major source of concern with respect to these grants right now nationwide. It's not just limited to Connecticut, and it's certainly not limited to Hartford. That people are already starting to we need to rethink how we're going to spend these grants if we can't get the people on board as quickly as we'd like them to. I don't think there's a need to sort of upset the apple cart, as it were, with our own plans at this point. It's much too early to say that. But as the year progresses, that'll be something that we're definitely keeping an eye on. And I just wanted to make just a more broad comment about monitoring grants. We're going to be monitoring grants a lot more closely and working closely with the school leadership teams to make sure that schools are spending down their grants, not just for these 3, but overall their grants, consistent with the plans that they had submitted to the state. We're going to take a much more active approach in making sure that we're not caught in a situation at the end of June where everybody's rushing to spend down their grants and the kids really aren't getting the benefit of the programmatic value that was set up early, when you submitted the grant in the first place. So, this is about, when you look at grants as an overall portion of our budget, it's more than $140 million a year. So we take the overview of this very, very carefully. And it's something certainly that, everywhere I've been, I paid a lot of close attention to make sure that we're not in a position to be returning money to the state.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Brody or Mr. Rigger?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brody?
Madam Chair, not a question, but a comment maybe, because we see the award, we see total spent or encumbered. Kind of what would help me or make me comfortable, but I'm not saying it can't happen, is total planned for. And I know that's not maybe for Mr. Penn, of course, but because it looks like, okay, 154 and you've only total or encumbered 12, but how much have we actually planned for, but it hasn't gone to the next step of being encumbered?
So there would be a big piece of that. I mean, I could tell you that all 154 million is spoken for in some way or another, either through all of the planning documents that we created and have shared with you in one form or another. We wouldn't encumber payroll, for instance, and payroll is a major driver of those grants. So the amount spent will grow with each payroll cycle that we do, but you wouldn't necessarily seen it in the spent or encumbered total until we've actually paid the person who's covered by that grant. But all 154 million are spoken for in a spending plan and a very large spreadsheet, frankly, that we keep track of everything that we expect to spend out of these 3 grants.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Chief Penn, I just have one question. There was, and it was a smaller amount. I can't remember if it was, maybe it came from Fed initially, ran through the state, where it was the first COVID relief funds that was like, we had to spend like, just, it's no longer active is basically what it is. I was wondering if it's helpful for others to know how we did on that, because I know it was some work that was being done at one point regarding that, and just wondering if that line is also helpful for folks, because I think in my head I went to say it was ESSER 1, but then I'm like, oh no, we didn't call it ESSER.
No,
something else.
I think the one you're referring to was called CRF, Coronavirus Relief Fund.
Yes. Yep.
That one had a spending deadline of 12/31/20, I want to say.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, all districts had a very, very small amount of time to spend that quickly. So I can go back and I can provide an update to the board on how much spending we got done out of that grant.
Okay, thank you. That would be helpful.
Okay.
And Ms. Brody, I see your question in terms of the planned spending. I wonder if we have to approach that in Chief Penn, you spoke to a little bit, but if we have to approach it in our committees
Yeah.
when we're talking about the programmatic work.
Yep.
And I know your point, Ms. Brody, about it being in different places too. And the reason I'm saying it is because from a financial perspective, while Chief Penn has talked about the oversight, you wouldn't report on it that way. That's why he made the comment about encumbered, right? So I'm trying to figure out like, and perhaps we could have more offline conversation of putting our heads together on how to do that. Because to your point, Ms. Brady, I think that, you know, if we just put, oh, what was budgeted, well, it's going to equal the total grant award. So that's not helpful. You know, just trying to think of how we could get that information. So let's maybe let's have some offline conversation if you guys were okay with that and figure that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because even on the pages that follow this memo, right? I mean, it gives you spending by object code, but that doesn't necessarily speak to the programmatic side of this, right?
Right.
It's just the financial piece of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll put that, Christine, if you could take that note down and we'll see what we can do to figure that out. That'd be great.
Will do.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, with that, if there's no other questions or comments, then I would say let's go up to agenda item number 1. We're about to go through our items for the regular meeting, which are basically for the most part, our contracts. So the first one is Hartford Parent University. Not sure if Chief, and that's still you, or if it's Chief Blackburk, but whoever, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. So good morning, everyone. I wanted to begin by stating that, yes, we did discuss the Hartford Parent University again during the Family Engagement Committee meeting, along with Vice Chair Brody. And I know that it is going to be discussed here and then moved to the general meeting. So Ms. Oliver, I'm not sure what exactly you want me to share.
Yeah, no, we have kind of a little bit of, and we went through our workshop. I would say for this meeting, the focus is more so on just kind of reviewing the amount and the source of the funding, a very high level, and just talking about, I used the phrase before, financially sound, and like everybody's jumping on it, but basically speaking it from that perspective, and then opening up to the board members for us if there are questions or comments from that perspective. That would be great.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for this contract, these monies would be utilized through SIG funding, as well as some of the money set aside for family engagement through ESSER. Do you want me to go do a breakdown?
Breakdown would be helpful.
Okay, great.
So we are partnering with Hartford, or we look to partner with Hartford Parent University for them to implement the bottom-up approach at 8 schools. And that is a total of $140,000 across 8 schools. And those 8 schools are listed here. Buckley, Hartford High, Weaver, Burr, MLK, McDonough, Parkville, and Sanchez, as well as doing outreach with our English language learners, also working alongside our ELL department in this office at $75,000. And that would include outreach workers, outbound calls, canvassing, of course, bi-monthly reporting to our office as it relates to the type of engagement activities. And then the in-kind, which is totals at $52,800, would include 3 co-designed learning sessions with HPU. And those learning sessions would include pre and post surveys, childcare, transportation, registration, food cost, Want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And there's also a security and custodial piece that's included, and that's listed as the value of 52,800, but that's in kind, both HPU and the district coming together. So the total cost for this contract is $232,800. The bulk of it being at the bottom-up approach for the 8 schools that are listed.
Questions, Ms. Brody or Mr. Rigger?
What's the timing of this?
Thank you, Mr. Rigger. We were looking to start this work with HPU in October, but we've had to adjust that timeline based on where we are with the contract. So we would be looking to begin right away through the end of the school year.
So to the end of the school year, and then I'm assuming we'll have this conversation again next year, and will that put us back on track in terms of from a timing perspective?
Yes, this would be through the end of the school year, and then next school year, if HPU is looking to contract with the school district again, they would submit another proposal.
Madam Chair, thank you. Madam Chair, I have just a more broader question around timing of the contracts.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Rigger.
So by and large, we know exactly what's coming into the district, right? I have a hard time understanding, grasping somewhat of a staggered approach with these contracts. Is there the ability, again, this is not necessary for Hartford Parent University, but do we have the ability to streamline the process when we say, look, all contracts for the next academic year needs to be submitted by June. It goes through our approval process, right? And then those contracts are in place come August or September. For me, I struggle with approving contracts while we're already in the current academic year. Again, I don't think this is the fault of the leadership team. For me, that just shows a somewhat of a lack of planning. And this is almost like last minute that you're coming to us asking to do some type of programming or joint collaboration.
So I'll respond to that, and then Chief Penn also, if you want to respond, or others. But I think that, to your point, we've been working towards that. What I will say, and I want to acknowledge here, is while there was a lot of planning that was put in place, especially around the American Rescue Plan dollars, some of that timing has been impacted by that. But one of the reasons that we now have the committee of the whole meetings that I love so much, and are kind of those big long meetings in the summertime, is because we're trying to front load all the contracts then. I think your point still, though, is very well taken, because we want to continue to improve. We don't want to be in a situation where it feels for us as if it's last minute, or obviously it impacts our students and our families in a negative way, in terms of what becomes, what appears to be perhaps lack of planning, or not enough time for planning. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that we'll continue to have conversations about this, because we want to ensure, especially since we'll be in the second year of the American Rescue Plan dollars, that we won't be seeing these type of contracts that we hope we're going to impact kids on day one happening in October. But I offer it to others if they want to join in that conversation, and also want to welcome also board member Stallings, who's joined us as well.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that. And I do know with the new process that there is the possibility that the board additional information and our partners have to go back and recalibrate their approach and so forth. What I would just say, again, I don't think it's doesn't fall solely on the finance committee, but to the extent that we could just streamline the process. The academic year doesn't change. It hasn't changed since I've been a kid, right? And we know what our needs are.
So
We should be,
perhaps, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, but I think we could figure it out.
Yeah, I think, something that, we can consider, I think, is, well, those contracts are brought to us in the summer. Is there a way, and perhaps this is what you were saying a little earlier, Mr. Rigger, in terms of June timeframe, like if we know these contracts are coming, that we're beginning to have whatever the internal process happens and ask the staff to do that earlier, similar to what we're doing with the budget calendar, right? Trying to push things earlier so that we have all that paperwork and all those other things are taken care of, so that we then perhaps can make sure that it feels a little bit smoother, I'll say. Knowing that we will have times that if a contract, is higher than $50,000 or higher, that we may have some exceptions to that. But for the most part, I think you have a really great point, and we just need to figure out how to do it and do it in a way that's most productive for all of us, right? So perhaps that is something that we could talk about in Chief Penn. I'm just thinking about, like, if we are able to do the budget process a little earlier, then does that allow us immediately to go into our contracts? So again, details we can figure out offline, but just thinking just off the top of my head.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that very briefly, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that there's relatively strict procurement policies that we have to follow on all these as well. As much as we'd like to accelerate this process, there's still the need, when it's a brand new contract, to go through an RFP or an RFQ and then negotiate a contract with the vendor. And obviously that takes time. It's a little bit different when it's a renewal, right? Because at that point, you've got sort of key terms and you may even have terminology in the existing contract that says if it's extended for a year, what are the terms of the extension? But some of these situations where we've had to create a brand new contract and had to go through a sourcing process, I just caution that, you may not be able to push this as hard as you'd like it to, but I think we could probably look a little bit closely at timing to see what can be renewed prior to the end of the fiscal year, so that it's already in place by July 1st, or certainly by the time that school starts. I think there's a little more reservation around pushing too hard on the new ones, just knowing that there should be an appropriate level of due diligence on the sourcing process and on the contract negotiation before it's even brought to your level.
So, Mr. Penn, I agree. I do want to push back a little bit in saying that for the next 10 years, I'm going to be aggressive. For the next 10 years, we know exactly what the gaps are in our district. So in terms of new contracts in the process, while I could appreciate the due diligence that needs to take place, like we know what we're trying to solve for, right? It's right. We have academic achievement, math for reading scores, right? Kids not going to school, violence. Now we have mental health. Those things are not going to change over the next 5 years. So what I'm saying is, if we know what the gaps are, if there's just any way that we could just streamline the process, whether new or existing, I would like for us to just take a look at that.
No,
and I completely understand there are some nuances, and I can appreciate that, but we know what the challenges are ahead of us.
I would agree. I don't think those challenges are going away anytime in the next decade. Your funding sources to pay for everything are still unknowns over that time, 10-year time frame.
Very fair. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief Penn and Mr. Rigger. Any questions specific to Hartford Parent University contract?
No, not a question, a comment, Madam Chair, that we did discuss, like there were a further discussion on metrics, and I'm assuming once promoted, like once presented, I'm sorry, to the board, that we could ask those questions directly on Tuesday, providing this moves forward.
That makes sense to me. So that information should be available to the entire board and for discussion. Yep. Any other questions or comments? That being said, it appears that we are good to move this forward to that larger meeting. Again, any concerns about moving it forward at this point for further discussion by the entire board? All right, with that, we're going to move on to the next contract, which is TNTP. And this might be, again, Chief Blackburk, I think.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Oliver.
Thank you.
So TNTP, this contract is to work with TNTP to build out our parent and caregiver academy. This would include stakeholder engagement, focus groups, community surveys, vision setting and design, working with like an advisory group to put all of that together. We're looking to do the work over a course of 7 months, beginning in October of 2021. But again, this was sent back to Family and Community Engagement and now being brought back to the Finance Committee. So working with TNTP, that stands for the New Teacher Project, and HPS, between October and the end of the school year, we would look to do stakeholder engagement, working with our community, then looking at how we're going to design the Parent and Caregiver Academy based on the information and all that has been gathered through the stakeholder engagement, and then have a design by the end of the school year to look for launching the Parent and Caregiver Academy in the fall of 2021. And the total amount for this contract is $100,000.
Thank you, Ms. Blackburk, Chief Blackburk.
Thank you.
Any questions from my peers on the board?
I am, through you, Madam Chair. This particular contract, I'm gonna be honest, I can't wrap my head around, and I guess I'll discuss it more Tuesday, that we are not able as a district to engage the community and to come up with a plan for a caregiver academy. I just can't, I can't wrap my head around us needing to spend $111,000 to do that. But I guess as I said, I'll get further into that on Tuesday.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brody. And Ms. Santiago, I think we are now on your email, just to let you know you're live on YouTube, just in case you don't know that. So with that being said, anyone else have a question in regards to the TNTP contract? Okay, so I'm also now going to ask a question.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I was wrestling with the mute button. If I can get just a tad bit, just a little more detail, because I'm first time I'm hearing about the contract, unfortunately, and upon hearing it for the first time, it does seem a tad bit obsessive to spend that kind of money on. Are we talking about organizing, or are we actually organizing? I'm trying to understand that. Is the contract about organizing and then implementing this, and how is that supposed to happen?
I'm wondering, Chief Blackburk, maybe it will be helpful to speak at how this aligns with our strategy, our SOP. Perhaps you want to speak to it that way?
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. So yes, in looking at the strategic priorities for the district and looking at the information that we received from families and them stating that they are interested in this type of engagement while we are working with students in the classroom, also using that dual capacity to help families also build. So of course, we can do a learning session on reading fundamentals, how to assist your child with reading at home, but families are also looking at other opportunities that could come through a parent and caregiver academy. Kind of like, how can we assist families with building their own just knowledge base. I referenced in the Family and Community Engagement Committee looking at certification programs or other micro-credentialing programs that we could work with our community colleges to bring to our families. So that is how it aligns to our strategic operating plan, that we are looking to engage families differently and also providing them just new learning opportunities and new experiences. And that definitely came from our climate survey that was given earlier this year. And that's what we got from families. So in thinking about the expanded learning opportunities, not just for students, but also for our families. So I don't know if that helps any, Mr. Stallings, but we are looking at doing deep stakeholder engagement to get from families, because we don't want to just assume what it is that they're looking for, but we want to work with them and get that information from them. So that deep stakeholder engagement to organize with families through the focus groups, listening sessions, and then taking that and building a design, having a core design team to build out the Parent and Caregiver Academy over that time frame, November through the end of the school year, then looking to launch the Parent and Caregiver Academy in the fall of 2021.
Okay. So just, I understand that concept because we talked about that particular theme quite a bit a few months back. And so what I'm hearing is the Saturday academies, or those Saturday community learning sessions that we talked about, and maybe 3 different hubs around the city. Is that what I'm describing?
So thank you, Mr. Stallings. Right now, we don't know if it would be a Saturday or, how that would take form, because again, we want to do that stakeholder engagement. So to your other point, that yes, we are looking at how we can create opportunities. I'll give an example that was shared with us from TNTP. We have families, parents, caregivers who may be interested in teaching. So maybe they want to learn more about how to become a paraeducator. And then from there, maybe they'll continue to expand their own learning experiences if they want to go on to be a teacher. That is how we are looking at the Parent and Caregiver Academy, that we are giving opportunities to families so they can also build their own capacity, and really referencing that dual capacity framework, that while we are working with students, we're also working with families to help them build their learning experience.
Right, I get that part, and I'm totally in support of that. I think it's a wonderful thing. What I was just trying to clarify is, or was, are you discussing what we have been discussing for quite some time? And I guess when we had these conversations with the superintendent, the concept and idea of this happening on a weekend was kind of the central theme. Now, I get it. You can sort of do this whenever you want to do it, but I was just trying to figure out if this was the same concept in which we were discussing. If so, then I'm fully aware of it and understand it. And didn't realize that there was a price tag to the implementation of this. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. If you are talking about implementing a new program from scratch, then yes, it would probably be expensive because it's something new. But what I'm just trying to figure out was if this is what we were discussing, because if this is what we're discussing, I'm 100% in support of it, especially if it's going to be something that's rooted directly in the community, and we have community access. So when I say community access, I'm not simply talking about just the loose school community. I'm talking about the greater community of civic leaders and people that are not directly connected to the school system, however, want to provide some kind of solution or collaborate. And that collaboration would probably be best in the evening and on the weekend. So I was just trying to figure out if we were breaking the mold. I was excited about the Saturday, that Saturday academy or that Saturday session, because that's something new, and we're opening up the schools to create a community center or the community focus on the school on a weekend. So I thought that was a wonderful thing. So I'm just trying to figure that out, because if that's what we're talking about, then again, I can understand the price tag of it. I think we still need to describe exactly how we're going to implement that, but that is something that you can get back to us on as you're doing it. But just to clarify, that's what I was curious about, and hopefully that's what we're talking about, because I think that'd be a wonderful program. I think it's a game changer, because when we discussed it in committee, we were talking about grant writing, we were talking about other micro credentials that parents can earn to be an equalizer in terms of qualifying for jobs. So yes, I think it's a wonderful thing. Hopefully we are talking about the same thing, because I think the implementation of this is important. I think it should be done very carefully, and I think it should be done in a very collaborative way. So not just with parents, but I think this is one concept that I know my colleagues would really want to collaborate on and figure out, because this would meet a high demand from a civic community standpoint. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stallings. And
Madam Chair?
yeah, and oh, do you want to respond, Chief?
No, I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Stallings. Yes, when you had mentioned just like Saturday, we don't know exactly what day it would be, but exactly what you shared, that would be the purpose of working with TNTP to do exactly that, because agree with you, we want it to be in the community, for the community, and them having a part of designing it, and then what it would look like moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Blackburg. And I see Ms. Brody, your hand up. I just want to acknowledge that those details, my expectation is another member who has not yet been presented, will come through also at the regular board meeting, assuming that we're moving this forward. So there'll be more of that conversation, but I did want to get to Ms. Brody. Ms. Brody.
Nope, and I won't take up any further time. I do just want to clarify for Board Member Stallings, there is no implementation associated with this cost. So I just wanted to make that point. There is no implementation that this contract will cover. And that was made clear by TNTP when they presented in committee.
Thank you, Ms. Brody. Any further questions or comments from also Mr. Stallings? Are you on?
Yeah, I'm shocked.
Okay.
That's all. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't. No comment.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I think it'll be through you, Madam Chair, a discussion on Tuesday, because it's just planning, it's going out, engaging community, is no implementation whatsoever. And that is the part where I was stuck, but looking forward to another conversation about this presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both. All right. With that said, it sounds like we do need to have that detailed deep dive conversation on Tuesday. From a financial perspective, I mean, obviously, we just talked about the pricing and what that includes for non, and kind of be able to have that deep dive later. I don't have any questions. I know this is part of the American Rescue Plan, and Chief Blackburg, you just explained its alignment to our strategy. Any concerns about bringing this to the entire board for discussion at our meeting?
Well, I have concerns. I just do want that to be on record.
Okay. So, and I think you're saying concerns about the contract, correct, Ms. Brody?
concerns about what they're providing. We have
Okay.
staff that can engage community and think, we've engaged community since forever in the day. So we have, staff that, and we have a whole welcome center that can engage the community, engage our stakeholders. We're paying $111,000. And as I said in committee, when we contract out, is something that we can't do. I don't think this is something that we can't do. And I guess that's my point.
Thank you, Ms. Brody. I think it's a great point. And Chief Blackburk, I would ask, or recommend during the regular board meeting, maybe bringing up some of those points for clarification, because what I'm hearing is the need for some clarification on some points. So, but thank you all. With that, I'm going to move us forward because it sounds like we do need to have that at the larger meeting, some more detail, but from a financial place, I'm fine. I'm going to move us on to our next contract, which is with BHCA, and Chief Blackburk, it appears that that's still maybe you.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chairwoman. All right, Blue Hill Civic Association. So as a part of our strategic plan, we discussed expanding our community schools, and we have worked to do that. We shared an RFP with the broader community in July of this year, and we brought back to the board contracts for our elementary and middle schools, but at the time, we did not have any respondents for the high schools. So we did receive, we extended the RFP. We did receive an RFP for Weaver High School from Blue Hill Civic Association, and they are looking to work at Weaver High School. I'm so sorry, I lost my, here we go. I was trying to find my notes here. Okay, and so in working at Weaver High School through the community school model, and at the high school level, it is our high school student success center. They would work with the student success center, as well as working with the Weaver High School population. As a part of that process, they are working to develop that work plan they have laid out, and I believe it's there. Christina, I'm not sure if you can share that. Or if it's attached. They have worked already with leadership to come up with a couple of goals that they want to address. And so they are looking to do work at Weaver High School for their students, addressing those three decided on goals by school leadership. And this contract is for $285,000.
Thank you, Chief Blackburk. Any questions from my board peer members? Okay.
I will say we discussed in committee, we had some very detailed metrics that were provided to us. Like we board members, we did have a lot of discussion, but the scope of service was clearly explained. The metrics were provided to us. That's what I remember from the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Brody. That's actually really helpful. So perhaps we'll talk even more about that in the larger meeting. Any other questions or comments from my peers? I don't see anybody getting off mute. I have one quick question, Chief Blackburk. So one of the things you mentioned was the fact that there were not initially responses to the request for proposals that went out for the high schools, for community schools. So this one is Weaver. Are we expecting any other contracts, or did you receive any other responses for the other high schools?
I have not received any other completed applications for the other high schools. I did have a phone call related to Hartford High, but have not received anything as far as a completed application. And so seeing that it is already like the middle of October, that is a concern because we definitely want to support Hartford High. But as of right now, no other completed applications.
So just as a quick follow-up to that, is the RFP process still open?
The RFP process is not open at this time. In conversation with our team, our friends over at the city, just trying to figure out how would we address that right now, understanding that there is still a need.
Yep. And understanding there might be some other procurement options since you've now tried it twice. Ms. Brody, I see your hand up. Ms. Brody.
I had a clarifying question, and I apologize, I don't have the documents in front of me. What was this dollar amount presented with all the work they were gonna do? Was the dollar amount that was presented in Family and Community Engagement Committee for this scope of service for Blue Hills Civic Association?
Thank you, Ms. Brody. Yes, that is the dollar amount in the RFP that they submitted. It was a different amount, but again, through conversation with them, we explained to them after their application was reviewed what the dollar amount would be.
Okay, I'll take a look back on that, on what the documents that were presented in Family and Community Engagement.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brody. Any other questions or comments? Okay, any concerns about moving it forward for further discussion at the regular meeting? Okay, we're going to continue on. Thank you, Chief Blackburg. I think we're no longer doing your items. All right, we're going now to our fourth contract, which is Ready CT. I saw Chief Avila, so I'm not sure if it's you, but I'll throw it out to whoever that one belongs to.
It does not belong to me, but I'll help in any way that's needed.
Okay. Anyone else here to speak on the Ready CT contract? Christina, any thoughts here?
That's a good question. Chief Avila, who does it belong to? I'm sorry. I thought it was.
Dr. Negron, typically.
Oh, okay. So can you give a brief overview if you at all can? I don't know where she.
I'm going to quickly ask her if she wants to do it. If not, then I will definitely do it.
Okay.
Okay, while you're asking, then let's go ahead and go to the adult education grants, which I don't know if that actually is still issued, Chief Avila or someone else. Oh, this is, I think, the grants that are going out, but I turn that over to whoever is here to speak on that contract, or is that a contract? Yes, full contracts.
So while Chief Avila, I guess, is reaching out to Dr. Negron, these are the annual grants that come in from the state to run adult education per state statute. As you see here in the brief explanation, we have the large adult, the 2.8 million grant to run adult ed with all these programs underneath. And then we have the cooperating eligible entity grant where entities apply, and then these are the ones that are chosen. They go through the whole process.
And to clarify, my apologies, this is the acceptance of funds. We do partner with the Urban League and also meaning Hartford Public Schools, Urban League, and also Literacy Volunteers of Greater Hartford. Got it.
Correct.
Any questions to the board members? Any questions regarding accepting funds for adult ed? Okay, so I think we are good to move that one forward. So now, and I see Chief Negron has joined us. So thank you, Chief Avila. And we're going to go back to Ready CT. And Dr. Negron, I know you just joined us, but I don't know if you're able to speak to that contract.
Sure. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So we were bringing forth a potential partnership with Ready CT, aimed to support our career pathways which are part of our high school redesign work that we began 3 years ago. This particular partnership is meant to support two pathways that are currently hoping to be implemented at Buckley High School. And the idea would be that through this partnership, we could support the computer science career pathway, which again, we began this year, as well as the leadership and public service career pathway at Buckley High School. The intent would then be to, in year 2, leveraging the ESSER funds, right, and the planning that had been done, to also be able to bring on board the pathway at Weaver. This would mean that by the end of year 2, all of our pathways would be adequately supported, because many of them are currently being supported by sponsors that Ready CT was able to help us secure in the past. Like, for example, the most recent one is through Hartford, I think it's Hartford Healthcare, that we were able to secure to support one of the pathways at Hartford High. But again, this one will be specific for 2 pathways at Buckley right now as part of year 1.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. Any questions? Okay, I see a no from Ms. Brody. Mr. Ricker, Mr. Stallings, you're all set?
I'm all set.
Thank you, Mr. Ricker.
Yeah, I'm good.
Thank
Thank
you, Mr. Stallings. Thank you. I also do not have any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and say that we are good to move this forward. Thank you, Dr. Negron, for joining us to give that overview.
Thank you.
With that said, we have hit all of our agenda items today. Just for anyone who just joined us and who's confused by that, we went a little bit out of order. So we did have some really good updates and conversations on some other items, but I don't have anything else. I'm just going to check in with Chief Penn and Ms. Santiago to make sure we're all set.
Believe we're good.
Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, perfect. Well, with that, let's take advantage of the fact we actually got through this in 1 hour. I appreciate all of you joining us here this morning in our meeting, and all those who are watching us live.
Actually, apologies.
Okay.
Chief Avila, I know, I'm sorry, we were texting briefly, so please go ahead. She did want to add one or bring a heads up to the Finance Committee. I apologize, Chair.
Okay. All right, Chief Avila, go for it.
So good morning, everyone. I just wanted to, and I have my colleagues here with me, Dr. Negron and Chief Davis Goose is also here as well, and Chief Blackberg, so that we could just wanted to talk and give you a heads up about Hope Academy 2 and things that might come in the near future. And so as we, as you know, we have Hope Academy 2 in ESSA funding, and that is to support students who are overage and undercredited. And we have a Hope Academy 1 at Hartford High for only Hartford High students, and we want to expand that to Weaver and Buckley students this coming year. And so we have been working very diligently on finding location and planning for the Hope Academy 2. We are very close to launching, but we are still exploring location, and just wanted to give the Finance Committee a heads up that I'm not sure what we would bring to the Finance Committee at this point, but just wanted to give a heads up that there might be a possibility that we do. And I'd ask if my colleagues want to add anything to that.
I would just add that we're also hoping that as we continue the exploration, that we then will be able to present something more concretely at the next Teaching and Learning Committee like we normally do.
Thank you. Oops, someone speaking up. Is that Mr. Ricker, Mr. Zoll?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I do have a question, and thank you for that update. From a programming perspective, does our piece of the pie play into this initiative of Hope Academy? I know they serve overage and undercredited youths. I'm not sure if it's particular to Hartford only. Just want to get your thoughts around that.
So I believe our piece of the pie plays a part in our tiered approach overall as a district, and that we have at this point different opportunities for our students meeting the different needs that they have. And so it does, but it doesn't necessarily play a direct piece in Hope Academy 2. It is an option for our students in our district, and that we are also designing different pathways, as Dr. Negron was speaking earlier, in our own high schools, as well as other opportunities to support our overage and undercredited students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief
Madam
Avila.
Chair,
Yep,
can I-
Mr. Stallings?
2 seconds. Very needed. Please, let's explore this a little more rigorously. And I'm excited about this because we definitely need it, and we need it, I think, in 3, well, there's no such thing as 3 corners, but 3 areas of the city. Strategically, I think that would be something that would help greatly, and I think that it's overdue, and I'm excited that you guys are working on that. Thank you, because we need it.
Thank you, Mr. Stallings. What I'll say is thank you for the heads up. I look forward to the conversation in teaching and learning, and I appreciate the heads up, because what I'm also hearing is you guys are trying to explore, and quickly there'll probably be need for contracts, et cetera, that will be hitting. And this kind of goes to your point earlier, Mr. Rigger, in terms of us trying to plan. So I do appreciate you coming to the meeting and providing us that heads up. Any other questions, comments, other items?
I do, Madam Chair. Maybe it seems like it's a teaching and learning thing, but if we could discuss possibly the post-secondary network, so I could learn more about that. I've heard it from the community, and I would like to know what that entails. If it was brought up before, it totally went over my head, but I think that's something I would like to dive into, and it may be a teaching and learning topic.
All right, so Chief Avila, Dr. Negron, Christina, hopefully you're taking some notes. It sounds like maybe we could just speak to that post-secondary network at our next teaching and learning committee. Thank you, Ms. Brody. All right, with that, now, not to, before was false, but now this one time is real. Thank you everyone for joining again and for watching today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Much appreciations for all the work that you guys are doing every single day. And with that, I will close